Welcome to the February the 12th, 2002 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. As we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that have made history and are continuing to make history this very day. And this is our magic tape of history number 447. And we are very honored today. We have a young man on the dais today that lives in Grand Prairie but works outside of the city limits in one of our neighboring cities. And we thought that was so appropriate. And when we met this young man about 6 or 8 months ago, we were very excited to find out that he's a Grand Prairiean at heart, but he is a Cedar Hill ISD guru. And we're so pleased to welcome you to the set today, Dr. Kenneth L. Urban.
Thank you, Ruthie. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes. And living in Grand Prairie in the high-powered community of Westchester, where they have beautiful trees and wonderful things happening. And then you motor every day to Cedar Hill, up that beautiful mountain and the escarpment. And I know that's fun. First of all, I want you to look out into your camera and tell us about the real Kenneth Urban. I want you to give us your parents' names, maybe where you were born, and maybe if you had siblings, and tell us a little bit about that. And if I interrupt you along the way, there are going to be some key questions that we want on this tape.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ruthie. I would first off say that it's not Westchester. I wished I could say that. It is actually the Country Day estate.
Oh, that's an estate too.
Right. Country Day is the residential community that I live in. I have lived in in Grand Prairie for 2 years now. I have worked for the Cedar Hill Independent School District this is going on my 6th year. I'm currently serving as Assistant Superintendent School and Community Services at Cedar Hill ISD, and have enjoyed it. It's been a very good, as they say, a good run. I hope that it will continue and last for a long time to come. I have one sibling, one sister, Ruth, who lives in San Diego, California.
And you would name her?
Dolores.
That's Dolores, okay.
And she thinks that she not only is the older sister, but has always treated me as if I was the child.
You were the baby.
That's correct.
You were always the baby of the family.
And she treated me that way.
Yes.
Both of my parents are deceased. My dad died 2 years ago, my mom 5 years ago.
Would you name them and also name your mom's maiden name, please?
All right. My mother's maiden name was Wilburn, Evelyn Wilburn Irvin. And mother was a teacher, English teacher. My dad, Shelton Irvin, was a teacher and football coach, football and basketball. In fact, he coached me in football, if you can well imagine what that's like, having a dad for a coach.
Yes.
And I hail from Gilmer.
Gilmer, Texas.
That is correct.
Okay.
In the piney woods of East Texas, all 5,000 strong.
Yes.
Is where I grew up as a kid. I finished high school in 1965.
Let's go back, the high school 65. We're going to just backtrack just a little bit.
All right.
But starting to school in Gilmer as a young man that was really ingrained in education by osmosis almost. How did you find school? Who was your favorite elementary teacher and your favorite subjects?
My favorite elementary teacher is a real easy call for me. Through the years, I've never forgotten her, and she remains today my favorite teacher. Her name was Mrs. Cobb. She was my 2nd grade teacher. Had a lasting impact on me. I learned one of the most valuable lessons from her. We had one of my classmates, and I can call her name, she wouldn't be angry about it, Linda was her name, was doing some artwork. And she was trying her best to show me the artwork, Ruthie, and it distracted me from listening to what Miss Cobb was trying to say. So who gets in trouble? Both of us.
Yes.
And I was crushed mainly because I loved Miss Cobb so much, didn't think Miss Cobb would do that in my way of thinking to me, and didn't quite frankly understand why I was being punished along with Linda. Well, some days later, after I'd cooled down and no longer pouting and whatever it is, and that was back in the days when you were paddle.
Yeah.
She explained to me, and I never forgot that she knew that I had not caused the problem. She knew that I was not the one that was drawing pictures, but the lesson that she was trying to teach me was to not allow people to pull you off or distract you from what you need to be doing. Yeah. And so I've never, throughout all these years, forgotten her for that, because it was a very valuable lesson that you're going to have distractions. And sometimes they're very tempting distractions, but we must stay true to the course. And I never forgot. And as far as subjects, I don't know. I suppose my favorite subjects have always been history,
Yes.
government, civics,
Yes.
to the extent that that's what I majored in as an undergraduate, was government with a minor in history. So I've always had that strong interest in learning about history and my roots, and as much as I could determine, and knowing much as I could about the world.
Did you ever become the teacher's pet, where you were the one to go and get the water and bring it back to the teacher and clean the chalkboard and carry her books and all of this?
I had that, Miss Cobb, I had that relationship with Miss Cobb. About the only one that I can really remember that I had that kind of relation. The next person that I really connected with was actually when I was a high school student.
Into high school.
I had a lady there who taught typing.
Yes.
And boys typically back then, may not be any different today, I don't know. I didn't really want to be bothered with typing, and so it was to me a chore. And I will never forget her, Arlene Stevenson, Miss Stevenson, who I think put into me, very much pressed into me, the love for typing and business and the order and that sort of thing, and
Yes.
took that strong interest in me as an old knucklehead boy.
Yes, yes. And when did you get your first calling, so to speak, in the athletic direction, which your father was really involved in?
Well, it's interesting because, Ruthie, I think there was a clash that existed with my mom and dad for most of the time that I was in school, including high school, in the sense of what I was to do. Mother did not want me to participate in football because she thought it was just a little
It will
too
be very hurtful.
hurtful and violent. And she had designs that I would follow my sister into being going into the band.
Yes.
Well, Dad, at a very early age, from the time that I first picked up a football, sort of was, I guess you'd call, the mascot of the team. I think he had it in his mind that I was going to be a football player. And so, as long as I can recall, I knew that I wanted to go and participate in sports, and was able to do that. We didn't have varsity, junior varsity at my school. And in fact, during the time that I came through school, since you said that we would talk a little bit about what we are observing this month.
Now, Black History Month is the
Right.
name of the game.
I was back, and I'm a product of an all-black school. And so that.
And the name of the school?
Bruce.
Bruce.
Bruce
Okay.
High School,
Okay.
Gilmer, Texas.
All right.
And there are a lot of things that we didn't have. I'm not on your program here to lambast what has passed, and
That's just truth.
that's truth, and nothing that we can do about it at this point. But there were a number of things that we did not have in the way of facilities and supplies, equipment, and those types of things. You've heard this, I'm sure, many, many times. I know I have, where people said they were in abject poverty but didn't know it.
Yes.
Well, I didn't perhaps realize that things were maybe even as dangerous and as perilous as they were, because we had a good community structure in place. Church nurtured, the family nurtured, the school nurtured.
And neighborhoods.
That's right. We very much had that. And I'm very grateful for what I was able to get, not only from my parents, but from the community.
And when you did get involved in the sports, football, what was your position?
Well, I played guard. I played offensive guard. I would say that I probably was just a fair player. I was by no means, especially by today's standards, an exceptional athlete. I was able to make the team and play.
And that made your dad happy.
And lettered. Yeah, well, it made him happy, but I think my dad always wanted me to do better, to excel more than I did. He never wore me out with it as a theme, but I do think that he wanted me to be a better athlete than I turned out to be. I was happy with it. You know, I think I was fairly successful.
Academically, when you were in high school at Bruce, what was your most favorite subject other than history? Now, history, we just sort of take to that naturally, but was there anything else that caught your eye?
I liked English, you know, and perhaps, you know, with my mother being an English teacher,
Yes.
I don't know if that had something to do with it. I've always had a love of prose, not so much poetry, but prose and literature, and to that end, English was an interesting subject,
Yes.
and I liked it. Even to the extent of when I was in college, I felt the same way. I always did like English.
When you graduated from Bruce, then what happened?
I matriculated to a college in Houston, Texas Southern University.
Texas Southern.
Texas Southern is where I went as an undergrad.
Was that a scholarship, or did Dad have to pay?
No, Mom and Dad had to pay, and there's a story behind that, a line behind that, Ruthie.
Yes, let's have it.
The story behind it is that I really was like about number 3 or 4 in my class. We didn't have a very large class, about 30-something. It was small school. And I did not understand how I fell so far down the line going into the end part of my senior year, such that I think I finished about 5th or 6th, I'm not sure. But it kind of pushed me out of scholarship monies. And I never will forget that I was quite upset about it, thinking that I had been cheated out of an honor and possible scholarship. And my parents really prevailed upon me in the sense of assuring me to not worry about it. And I think I went to school as an undergraduate with a little bit more seriousness than a lot of other kids would have gone, because I thought I had a little bit, for lack of a better word, a little bit of a chip. But I put that chip on my shoulder to good use, and that I used it to motivate myself. And as a result of that, did quite well as an undergrad. Well, that's not the only reason, but I do think that that was a motivator, and did quite well academically while I was in undergrad school.
When you left Gilmer to go to Houston, the big deal of the day, to wonderful campus of Southern, what did you think about the big move?
I knew that it was going to be a significant move, if for no other reason that I was going from a very small place
Yes.
to a big city.
Yes.
I had been to Houston before with my parents, and so I had some idea, an inkling of what the city looked like. But the feeling I think I had as much as anything was, what will my experience be once I get there? I've been successful in high school. I've been a well-rounded person. What's it going to be like when I suddenly find myself surrounded by scores of people that I know nothing about, but are from larger places, from larger cities and so forth? And that was quite a bit of concern for me when I left to
Did
go to
any
college.
of your classmates or your good buddies make the trip to Southern with you?
To Texas Southern? Yes, it did. In fact, let's see, believe it or not, I believe there were 5 of us that went to the same school.
How wonderful.
And which was most unusual.
Yes.
For that time.
A small class.
That's correct. That's correct. 5 went to the same school. That is fact. That's correct. Let's see, it was 1, 2, 3. Yes, 5 of us.
And when you entered, had you already made up your mind on your career path, or were you just taking the basics and trying to get by for a while?
I knew what I wanted to major in. I went in knowing that I wanted to major in government political science, because I knew going in what I wanted to do beyond the baccalaureate level.
Yes.
My dad was very, very high on my being a lawyer. So
Yes.
from the time that long as I can remember, he had in mind that he wanted me to be a lawyer, to go to law school. So I went in knowing that I wanted to pursue political science, government, and then use that as a stepping stone to go into to law school.
And halfway through, you've already made a decision. How did you drop the law, Bill?
Well, I didn't drop the, well, I say I didn't drop the law. I actually, while I was there at Texas Southern, got a number of scholarships, academic scholarships. I went off to Columbia University in New York one summer. I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison for a whole year on an academic exchange program. And then I also went to Yale University one summer on an academic scholarship. And by the time I graduated, I came back to Texas Southern, believe it or not, to wrap up. I went to law school and got a law degree, obtained a law degree, a doctor of jurisprudence. Knew probably going into my last year of law school that somehow it just wasn't ringing quite clear for me. I didn't have the fervor to me or the passion that I thought that I needed, and I never passed or took the bar, never passed the bar, the bar exam, and I ended up going in a completely different direction in terms of law. Law was very helpful, but I didn't pursue that. I worked in some legal venues, U.S. Attorney's Office, NASA, Exxon Oil, Conoco Oil. There were a number of legal venues that I worked in, even as a student. But I just really knew by the time I graduated that law in the classical sense, you know, putting up your shingles and going to practice, really wasn't
your cup of tea.
It just was not. I knew it. I didn't maybe admit it to myself, but I knew that it was not the direction for me to go.
A young black man from Gilmer, Texas, passed the Mason-Dixon line and going afar to Columbia and Yale. I'd like you to comment on that.
Well, you know,
for the boys and girls that may be watching our show, some of them aren't brave as Dick Tracy like you were.
Well, I tell you, it's really interesting how that whole thing started, Ruthie. There were a couple of representatives down to Texas Southern at the end of my sophomore year, interviewing for a program that they called at the time the Intensive Summer Studies Program. And the schools that were involved, the universities that were involved in that program was Harvard, Yale, Columbia. And I probably was the last person in the world to even know that they were down interviewing students. I had a good average in college, but I didn't know that this was going on. And this is a true story. I actually, when I found out, had on some shorts, cut off pants, and the time was running out for me to go over and to have any chance of interviewing with the representative who was there. And I was sort of angry that I had not been told that they were down interviewing. And out of a sense of even, you might want to call it defiance, I go over and practically insisted that I have a chance to be interviewed. Well, to this very day, I'm eternally grateful to Dr. Ford, who was over the program, didn't have to do it, but he allowed me to come in and said that he was sorry that I had not been told, but since I was insisting on it, come right on in, young man. Here's a white guy, grayish hair, endowed professor, down interviewing, and he explained the program and what it was all about, that they were out down in the South, particularly in the South, looking to find as many students of color to give them an opportunity to go to one of those 3 universities to see if, didn't say it this way, but in effect, could you cut the mustard?
If you make the grade.
If you could make the grade. And so when he finished interviewing me that day, that particular Saturday, I never will forget it, he says to me, what I'm about to tell you, you will have to keep it a secret and not share this with anyone. And I said, yes. Just knew he was going to blow me off, and he said, you are the first one I've selected. Now, he had interviewed both Friday and part of Saturday, and he said, you are the first that I have selected, and I want you to know that you've impressed me. You might not have intended to impress me, but you have, and that started a very good relationship with him, because at that time he was teaching in Columbia. So from that point, I went to Columbia. One sort of advantage I had was that my dad had obtained his master's degree At Columbia.
At Columbia.
That's correct.
That was an age.
It was, and
Oh, that was
he
an age.
prepared me in the sense of, you know, it is truly the naked sit. You have to be very careful and all those kind of things. He couldn't prepare me for everything, but he did at least give me, I think I had the ups, maybe over some of the other people who participated in the program. But it was a heck of a challenge. New York is what it is, huge. And yet exciting. Got a chance to go to Shakespeare plays and of course go to Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium, the Arts, Guggenheim, the zoos, the whole 9 yards, the UN, United Nations.
Yes.
It was an extraordinary opportunity and experience for me, never will forget. And the challenge of what I would say to any young person today is that even though my parents were educators, there were barriers still in front of me just because of the time in which I came along, civil rights era, when a lot of doors were closed, regardless of how smart or how sharp you were. But the one thing that I got out of all of those opportunities, Columbia, Yale, University of Wisconsin, you can be anything you want to be. You can do anything that you put your mind to if you're determined to do it. And despite odds, challenges, and lots of other things that I had to face, I'm a true living witness that you can make it if you believe you can.
Yes. And after graduating from law school with that degree in jurisprudence, and then where did life take you then? Well,
I ended up actually working for a pipeline company in a legal capacity for a while, and when I think back on it, it was a good paying job. I had a nice big end office and all the trappings, you know, you would say of success. I was able to buy a new car and living the life of Riley, but I was frustrated because it was not, I wasn't happy. And so I stayed there for approximately a little over maybe a half a year, I'm not sure, maybe almost a year. And from that point on, my life started pushing me, or pulling, as it were, in a different direction. I ended up getting into administrative work. I've worked in a number of administrative capacities, collegiate level, federal program administration, my own consulting firm.
You've done the whole 9 yards.
I've done a lot of things, that is correct, a lot of things. Now the law degree, the law background was very, very significant in that it helps to prepare you for a number of directions. People tend to think that you have to practice law. They need to look around at Congress, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but when you look at Congress, some 80 and 90% of the people there are attorneys by training.
3 sons and 1 daughter.
Yes.
And a school administrator. What a change from Gilmer, Texas.
Quite a change, yes.
Tell me about your little family.
I have 3 sons and a daughter. My oldest is Daryl. He's 31, turned 31 on December 23rd. He's currently working on his doctorate degree in Washington, D.C.
All right.
He graduated from Prairie View A&M University a few years ago and went into police law enforcement work, stayed there a couple of years, and then went back and got a master's degree and taught for a while, Fort Bend ISD, which is a suburb of Harris County, Houston. I have a daughter, 26 years old, Corey, who completed her master's degree at Penn State University this past summer and is currently working in Long Beach. And the 22-year-old, have a 22-year-old Brian, who just graduated last May from Hampton University in Virginia and who's currently in New York. And I have a 14-year-old who probably will outstride them all before it's over. They all have done quite well academically.
The 14-year-old's name?
Is Jordan.
Jordan.
And they all have been good kids.
Good kids.
Very good kids. They
admire their father.
I hope they do.
You're a good role model.
We have our battles, but I think that I would hope that they do.
And what brought you to the Cedar Hill ISD. And so that the General Assembly would know, I met you through a school program with the Chamber of Commerce when we had a legislative workshop at the Grand Prairie ISD. And all of a sudden, I found a young man in attendance there from Cedar Hill.
Right.
And I even was nosy. I questioned you. So, what brought you into school?
Well, I was doing consulting for the district. I had done consulting work, diversity training, human development, conflict resolution training for a number of school districts in this area, Duncanville, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill. And the superintendent asked me if I had an interest in possibly going into school work. And
I think
said,
that is a miracle.
it really is. And my answer to him was that, yes, I mean, what's it paying? Like so many young people today, they want to know the first thing out of their mouth is how much is the job paid. But
you got another one to send to college.
yes, I knew what I had, and he did make a joke out of it in just that way,
Yes.
former Superintendent James Reuter. But anyway, from that, I started into administration, and it was in personnel first, went from that into a position that took advantage of my legal background, district ombudsman, where I worked a lot with parent issues, and from that I was promoted into my most recent current position, Assistant Superintendent, School and Community Services.
And that has so many titles. We have a minute and a half left on this interview. I want them to know all of your assignments. Community volunteers, before and after school program, community education, parent and school relations, the district's educational foundation. That in itself is a full-time job, hustling money for Cedar Hill
It
Foundation.
is. And I'm
Which
glad,
one's your favorite?
Well, probably the dealing with the parents, volunteerism, and community relation. That is by far, I get the most satisfaction out of that because you know you are resolving something. You are helping to resolve issues and so forth, and I enjoy it. Very taxing at times, but very also gratifying. That would clearly to me be the one that I enjoy the most.
In the half minute that we have left, what are you going to do when you grow up?
It's kind of like
What's next?
It's kind of like the Volkswagen that's when it grows up, want to be a Cadillac.
That's it.
I want to continue as long as God gives me strength and health doing what I'm doing right now. Don't know where that's going to lead me, but I hope that it's around young people because I do have a passion for and a true, genuine love for young people because I know how much you can transform things through kids. If you give them the right, proper foundation, young people can transform the world. And so I want to do my part to help prepare young people to do that.
You've already given the most valuable lesson. You told the young people that they could do anything that they wanted to. And I'd just really like to wrap up this interview on that note. That is a wonderful challenge, and it also is a very exciting thing to come from a young man that has all of the credentials to be anything in the world. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it is just wonderful to have you on the set, and we're glad you're Grand Prairian.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.